My Broadway's better than your Broadway.
My Broadway's the only Broadway, because there's no business like show. Okay, that's enough of that. Sorry. Okay, we're talking about Broadway versus Broadway.
Whew.
A battle royale. Not really. We're just going to
really.
talk about the different experiences of them.
Yes.
And so a lot of people don't know like our experiences in like life. Like, so you played on Broadway in
Nashville.
I played on Broadway in New York City.
There you go.
It's kind of it's a different little world.
They're a little dissimilar, but
I was
maybe
going to say
similar as well.
Yeah, more similar than you think.
Yeah.
But again, not at all. And so what was your experience like? So tell me about Nashville.
So, if you don't know, the little honky-tonk district in Nashville is called Broadway. That's the name of the street.
I thought it was called Brass Stables.
It could be that. It's Lower Broad. That's where all the Tootsies and the Stage and Legends and all those places, they're on Broadway. And so if you were a Broadway musician, there are like 60 stages that are open from like 11 in the morning to 3 in the morning again, and it's full. It's just music all day long. Just 5 blocks of crazy music. You don't rehearse. You just have to know the random 200 songs. You get called. Most of the time, you show up to the gig.
Did you say you don't have to rehearse?
No. There are no rehearsals. So you show up.
When did they send the charts to you?
There was this infamous like Dropbox folder of like 1,000 like Nashville number charts that if you knew the right people,
And
they would send
when
to
did you get the score?
there are not so many scores on my Broadway.
Okay.
Less scores.
So when you played though, you played at nighttime, I assume mostly.
Mostly, but I mean, they were
daytime
11 o'clock shifts, like 11 a.m. shifts.
11 a.m.
So they were 4-hour shifts, right?
So you had matinees.
We had matinees.
That's
very
a Broadway
nice.
term.
Brunch shows.
No, matinees. Matinees a real show in Broadway. Come on.
I know. I don't know about these things, Baxter.
It's very hoity-toity. It's really not. Anyway, but so in playing on Broadway, so you guys, were you paid like a set rate? Was there a scale that you were paid, or was it?
So it depends on the club. There's a very small base pay. It is mostly tip based. It's all about down there the culture of tips and running the jug.
So correct. They were not paid anything.
I mean, like it could range from $27 for 4 hours to $100
per hour, or
for the 4 hours. Now, I mean, I would often walk away with way more money than that because, again, it's all tip based.
Okay, so I do know. I'm just messing with you, but I know the tips are pretty heavy.
Right.
And you could walk away with hundreds of dollars per shift.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes you're telling us like who would stop in and just take over sets sometimes.
I mean, you could see like Brad Paisley's. You could see Keith Urban would come and do random sets with bands on Broadway.
And just to give people a frame of reference to, like, these places are not like Broadway theaters in New York. These places are the size of our studio.
Oh, they're you
narrow.
Got 300 people packed into these tiny, narrow things.
Corridors with the glass, and the band is often sitting in the window.
Almost always, yeah.
And like you see the drummer's like his little crack is what you see, which I always thought was hilarious. Like, which one has the best crack as we walk by?
There was a drummer that we all knew that fell out the window one day, broke the window. And it was funny, and it was all on video. He was a little hurt, so we did the whole. Everybody kind of GoFunded me money for him, and he was fine. But
funny.
But also funny.
But so, and you guys would play like till the wee hours of the night too, right?
The best shift on Broadway was like a 10 to 2. 10 p.m. to 2 a.m.
That's
2:30, 3, depending on.
It's a long time to play.
No breaks.
Did you bring all your no breaks?
No breaks.
No breaks.
No breaks.
Like you gotta go pee.
Then we would work it so that like the singer could maybe do a song acoustic, everybody could run and pee. Or if you had a buddy and you saw him, you like, hey, come sit in, and you'd go pee.
And the whole idea of that is like the minute they stop, people
leave
and they go to the next place and they stop selling alcohol.
They stop selling alcohol, we stop making tips. The bar empties out, we have failed. Fail.
And that has happened. I've seen that happen when you walk by and there's an empty one. You're like, well, that band sucks. Don't go in there. You want to go in the one where it's packed. You do. Yeah. If you're in Nashville, not right now. Is it happening now?
It's starting to open back up. Everything has to close at 10:30 or 11, and the bars are at like, they can have like 50 people in them, which is not very many.
But and I lived in Nashville for 4 years too, so I've experienced it obviously, and I think it's a phenomenal culture. And we're gonna joke around because obviously Broadway New York City is way better. But we'll joke. No, it's phenomenal. The people there are outrageously awesome.
Yeah.
And I would say probably some of the top quality musicians I've ever met in my life.
It is really cool to be part of that pool of musicians where everybody is just at a level that you can show up, meet these guys, and you know it's going to be the people watching think you guys have been playing together and rehearsing your garage every weekend, for years.
Well, I'm going to ask this question because there's maybe some guys out there watching that are younger dudes that are like, hey, I would love to do that one day. Yeah. How do you get into this?
The biggest thing is go there. Go to the bars, watch. When I moved there, I would go with my little notepad, and I literally made a list of 100 songs. Like, I don't know these songs, and I made sure that I would know those songs.
How many songs did you know at that point?
When I left Nashville, I probably had 400 songs in my brain. Like standard,
Did you have the charts or you just knew them?
I always had a little mini iPad on my mic stand because if people would ask for something, I could pull a chart up. So we would do songs all the time that no one in the band had ever did.
Pull up a riff. Okay.
If any one person in the band knew the song, like if the bass player knew the song, he would call numbers to everybody.
And I've been in situations like that. And that's something we want to stress. If you're like a young guy going out there wanting to make it, you just have to be able to play music on the fly.
You can't. It's not like, oh, we're gonna make tracks and these songs are 2 minutes and 37 seconds long. No, it's just you just have to be able to listen and react and play.
And that's sort of Broadway's very different in that respect. And we can jump into that now.
Yeah.
Do we have any more we should talk on?
We'll come back to it. There's all kinds of stuff, but yeah.
It's the part where you're talking about Brad Paisley and them just jumping just cracks me up because, if those guys pop in, the tips have to go through the roof, and who gets the tips?
The band got the tips, which is fantastic.
It's amazing.
Do you know who Cole Swindell is?
Yes.
When his "You Ain't Worth the Whiskey" song was like big on the radio.
No, I don't know the name.
He would. That was like because it was always a constant thing to listen to what was on country radio and to have it. Like when a song came out, you learned it that day so that when people requested it, you could play it.
I failed this job already.
But Cole Swindell would come downtown, feeling pretty good. If you know what I'm saying, with his like posse of folks.
Oh, I know what you're saying now. It took me a minute. I was like,
and he would always have on his, and he is a fantastic guy. Don't hear this as a slam on him at all, but it was funny because he would be wearing a hat with his own initials and like sweatpants, and he would jump up and sing his hit song that he's touring nationally.
Awesome.
With us,
and you guys would crush,
and it would be great, and people would just be like, oh, so we kind of became. Like, Cole Swindell wouldn't know me, but I felt like we were buddies because every time he would see us, he knew that we were doing his tune, and he would just jump up on stage.
That's amazing.
And he would do it.
You guys were bros.
We were kind of bros.
That's
we were party Broadway bros.
God, so I moved to New York City, Broadway, pretty much right after school and everything finished up. I was like, I'm just going to move up there. Lived on a friend's couch for months. Thank you, Wayne, and thank you for the people that you had come and visit that I got to meet that lived on the couch with me. Some were pretty girls. It was great. It was a neat thing. So in New York City, as people don't know or do know, it's a very high rent place. And unless you have
can I even imagine?
He lived in this place in Soho. He had a real job, but it was probably 300 square foot, one bedroom. I slept on a futon. The living room was maybe 7 feet wide,
right?
By 12 feet. And the bedroom was a little bit bigger. It was small, but anyway, let's live in New York City. I was on the couch for quite a while until I had to just be there for a bit. So when I first moved to New York, people were like, how did you get into Broadway? Or how did you get into that scene? I'm like, well, I went and auditioned at this big producer guy's house when I got there. And I just moved there. I got connected through someone I know to get the audition.
I was going to ask that. So the auditions come through sort of networking,
it's all
knowing
networking.
People.
If you don't know anybody, it's super hard. I'll give some tips on I was just a guitar player. But I did some other things I'll get into later, but that was sort of the touring stuff. That was not on Broadway, but the Broadway shows touring the country and whatnot. But I went to this guy's house. He's probably close to 80. I don't know. He just looked like an old white man. I think he was Italian. I can't remember his name. He lived in the Upper East Side in some fancy apartment, really high up, like a penthouse. Not as fancy as you would think, though, but fancy. So I play my stuff, and then he looks at me and says, "Where are you from?" I'm like, "I'm from North Carolina." He's like, "You should go back." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "You don't have it. You don't have what it takes." I'm like, "Wow." I was like, ouch. That really hurt my face. I was like a young kid. I just turned 20 or something, I think. I was a young kid. I was like, wow, that sucks. I wore my little suit, dressed up. I had one suit. I think my mom bought me that at Brooks Brothers. It was expensive. When I went to high school. Same suit. I'm carrying my little classical guitar up, thinking I'm going to change the world. And this guy just slams the door right in my face. Immediate, my first New York experience. Then I started grind for a bit, and I was in bands and whatnot because I grew up doing punk stuff. I was punk, then I learned classical. Went to a classical music school for high school, North Carolina School of the Arts, and then learned how to read music really well. And then my real break into Broadway though was when I met this one young lady. She was my sister's college roommate at Furman, South Carolina, and she was a musical director for Sweeney Todd at one point.
Wow.
And so I got to go up and audition with her. She lived on the Upper West Side, I believe, and I lived downtown always, so it was a big, just a little quick 30-minute commute up there. I auditioned. She liked me. She's like, hey, you seem really cool. She was a sweet, beautiful little cherub face, just wonderful, really tiny. I remember she was like barely 5 foot, if 5 foot. But she had a little upright piano in her thing, and I played some. She's like, "You're good." So she put me on some parts for some shows that were in production, pre-production. That were like trying to get financed, and so I played in these terrible shows. Like one was called like Walk Away. It was about like someone with multiple sclerosis and a talking cat, and they were trying to be swingers in the apartments because she knew she was dying. The cat had a musical number. It was horrible, but so I don't know why it stuck with me. That's the one that always the worst shows. I remember playing, but the thing with that, then eventually I got a sub job on a real Broadway show. And then once you get a sub job, you have to join a union too. So I was a union member because you can't play on Broadway unless you're, I think it was local 806 or 802, I can't remember. It's been 15 years now. It was one of those. So you join the union because the union does sort of like it sets a rate. So you get paid a rate for rehearsals. You get paid a rate for performances. You get paid a rate for everything. And it's kind of, and I have to say, a lot of people will knock on unions. Like the union there is good because we would all play Broadway for free.
Right.
To get a shot to play.
Yes.
And the producers would pay you $0 if they could probably, because doing a Broadway show is really expensive. And that's kind of how I got into it.
Now, we're winging it a lot of times. You're not winging it playing in a Broadway. Are you playing in a pit most of the time?
Yeah, you're playing in a pit, or you're playing like off stage, or you're playing on stage behind like a mechanized machine that will roll around and show you at the end of the show. They're like, hey, it's a real band. Like it's not a track, because a lot of people come to Broadway from, I'm just going to use Ohio because that's the middle of the country in my mind. They come there and like, hey, this is a cool, like most people don't think it's real music happening.
You guys are playing.
There's a real band
what's
playing,
going on.
but you have to be able to read.
I was going to say you're reading everything.
You were reading a score.
Reading the dots.
You were sent the score, and it is brutally competitive too. If you show up at like your first rehearsals and you don't know your stuff, you were fired on the spot.
Wow.
It's not like, hey man, that was nice meeting you.
How long would you have?
I mean, you might have. One of my friends, God, like he's the guitar player for Saturday Night Live right now. Like he used to share rehearsal space with us, and he was in this band called Carbondale, which was amazing. They were signed by RCA, I think. And then they were dropped. The label just completely blanked them. It was horrible. They were set to be Maroon 5. They were touring with Maroon 5. But Maroon 5 wasn't even famous yet.
So close.
But he's the guitar. This is an idea of his audition thing. He was brought up to be the guitar player for Saturday Night Live. They just showed him like the charts. 45 seconds is what they gave him, or something like that. And they're like, no, it's jam. So they had to jam on top of them and be able to comp. But those guys are players. He was the best musician of that band. Like the drummer was really good too. He wasn't as nice, but the guitar player was like the nicest guy. He's so easy to get along with, and that's the other big thing. You better not be a jerk.
That's true. That is a big similarity because same thing. Because you're with these guys all the time, and sometimes 8 hours a night if you're doing 2 shifts.
Right. Like
you better be cool.
We have
we
do a show, and then but you have 7 shows a week.
Right.
The same show.
Yeah.
Every time. No deviation. There's no improv on most of the shows. Every once in a while you'd have a moment where like, hey, there's a guitar solo. You can change it up a little bit, but don't flub it up.
And our nights were, oh, let's do 3 guitar solos in this song because we have to play for 4 hours.
I mean, there is something like, it's neat like when you see like a Broadway pit, like everybody's just sitting there, we'd have books. Because after you do the same show for long enough, like I
imagine you got it.
You might read it, and then but then what was neat after I moved away, I ended up getting cast when I moved down to North Carolina on some local theater things, and I never acted before a day in my life. Like I don't know anything about acting, but then this led to bigger things. But I can play guitar and I can pretend to be dead people really well. Like I can do Buddy Holly spot on.
Yeah.
I'm pretty good at Johnny Cash. I've got Neil Diamond down pretty well. He's not dead, I know, but I love Neil Diamond. I can do a mean Neil Diamond. Which is a show I have coming up, come to think about it. Hey. Except for this COVID sort of fouled that all up too. But you're going to be in that one. But I got cast as Buddy Holly for a local production, then that led to more. And then before I knew it, I'm talking to the writer of the Buddy Holly story in this London stage show, and I was playing Buddy Holly all over the place for years, well past how old I should have been doing it, because hairspray and makeup can do wonders. But you've got to, and that was a eye-opener to me, and all my Broadway friends that were struggling in Broadway were like, how did you get an acting job on this thing? You've never taken one, and you suck at acting, and I do suck at acting. But I can pretend to be Buddy Holly because he was 19 and he was a young kid and it was great.
That's awesome.
And that was Cindy Beggs. She was the first one who brought me onto that, and it changed my life in a lot of ways because it opened me up to the joy of doing like live acting, which I was always a pit guy, and it was just a different experience.
It's funny you say that because playing on Broadway was almost like acting, right? Because you couldn't just stand there play. You had to like be up in front of the stage and dance and interact with the crazy bachelorettes with their pink boas. And
You had lots of drunk people.
Lots of drunk people, and you had to deal with them. And like I used to play for this one guy, and it was when the Luke Bryan tune "Country Girl Shake It For Me" was huge, and we would have country girl shake-offs every night. So we'd get all the drunk girls coming up on stage.
See, that's where I think Broadway Nashville wins. Because most of the time I'm just looking at like the French horn player or something, and or the drummer.
But so you had to interact with these people and make it to keep. It's so competitive down there because there are so many bars. If they don't dig what you're doing, if they're not entertained, they just literally go out and 2 feet to the next door. So if you weren't engaging, especially at those late shifts, the late shifts were sort of like the party shifts, That's
when people they've had enough. They're not super lit yet, but they're getting there. By 2, they're gone.
At 2 they're gone, but it's at 10 that's when all the young people are coming out and they want to throw down. So, you had to put on your larger than life sort of.
Did you have
presence.
a belt buckle?
I never had a belt buckle.
We're gonna have to remedy that. So
had
we're gonna start a GoFundMe for Jonathan's. We bought him some boots when he played the Ryman a couple weeks ago. Oh, those them? Oh, you're wearing them. That's cool. But maybe we'll start a GoFundMe in the shop or if you guys want to.
Giant belt buckle.
But it says like Jonathan Robinson.
I always felt like they were guitar scratchers.
Well, they are, but that's part of the cool thing.
Part of the cool thing. But I did have lots of pearl snaps when I was doing those things.
You and Derek are like the same person. It's depressing.
And then it became like, T-shirts and flat bill, the trucker hats.
It's it's fun to compare because I've worked with a lot of great players from Nashville too and in New York, and it's like it's neat when you get to that level, and I'm talking about players that are way better than me, way better, like different levels. Like they're all so nice. These great players, like the great ones of Nashville. I sat in a room with Chet Atkins before he died, and I didn't know who it was. He was so nice. I had no idea until after he left because I was an idiot. This was pre-internet savvy.
Yeah.
I was a young dude, and then Bella Fleck, phenomenal. Mark O'Connor, one of the best living fiddle players in the world, and mandolin players and guitar players. I took fiddle classes with him and babysat his kids, and like the nicest guy in the world. And I got to Edgar Meyer, Yo-Yo Ma, like these guys, and like
world class.
Beyond like prodigy level.
And even being guys like guys who are legit stars like Keith Urban, Brad Paisley, Ricky Skaggs, those guys they're as nice as that.
Oh, that's the thing we're talking about too. Like, because Derek was bringing up, like we're talking about on Broadway in Nashville. Like, like people go out and you might see these famous guys pop up. And say, well, that doesn't happen in New York. I'm like, it does though, because after like we have the piano bars and everything, and you go to the piano bars like all up off of Broadway, and a lot of times down in the West Village too. That's where the best ones were. Like you go down near like the Stonewall, like and not Stonewall, the Monster though. It's a great bar, and you see all sorts of stars coming down there after the shows. And just singing songs, but these are Broadway stars. If you go in the middle of the country, in Kansas, you're not going to know who this guy is. But Hugh Jackman was a Broadway star. You get like guys like that walking around, and it's pretty. And they'll just come and sing, and you sing songs when you're singing like show tunes, and it's funny, it's fabulous, it's festive, it's gay and lolly dolly happy. Like you're all so, and it's just dumb and fun.
That so Broadway in Nashville. What a lot of people don't realize, and you had to be like a diehard, like the people who vacation in Nashville every year would know this. But
I know people did that. That's cool.
People do it.
Whoa.
And you would know when like certain groups of people came, like dudes from Chicago would come because the hockey team was playing, and you would know, okay, like Chicago was in town. But you'd have guys playing downtown who were, this guy might be the drummer for Brooks and Dunn, and he plays in Broadway when he's home for extra cash or for something to do, or
Garth
like
Brooks band.
Garth Brooks, like keyboard player, a guitar player, or you'd have, you'd be playing with somebody who is, Montgomery Gentry's bass player or whatever. Or do you remember that band from the '90s, Vertical Horizon?
Yeah.
Their drummer did Broadway forever.
That's so funny because Wayne, the guy who's a couch I lived on for like years, like he was obsessed with Vertical Horizon. Like he was obsessed with them. That's funny you just mentioned that.
But it's funny. It's, so you'd have all these guys who are like touring with major acts, and they're playing at Tootsie's or Second Fiddle.
I think the key is like for any of you guys that do want to get in these worlds is like, obviously learn your skill, but I learned this from a good friend of mine, like Dr. Peter Ellman. The 3 A's: be available, be affable, and have ability. That's pretty much it. Like just like so, every gig that came up, I said yes to. When I got in the circle, I was always I always was happy and super nice to be there. I wasn't a drug addict.
That's a big one.
Not saying you have to be clean and sober, but it's like you don't be a drug addict. Like when you're trying to
don't be worthless. Like we've all been on the road with those guys. Everybody in Nashville knows about the guy that you go on the road with who they won't move anything. They're a slob. You can't get them.
You guys are so much more nice about than the New York system was. You were like one time and you're gone.
Yeah, we were sometimes too forgiving, probably.
Yeah, I mean it was New York is not because there's a lot of money riding on every. Broadway and shows are probably one of the more risky investments besides junk bonds.
I can get that.
They close the biggest closer failures were what Paul Simon's Cape Man or something. With I think I forgot who the lead singer was. He married Jennifer Lopez at some point. He had
a little Mark Anthony guy.
Yes, I think he was the star. And then even Spider-Man collapsed, and that was U2. They even had Bono and
it's crazy that
come over and try to help it.
Right.
It's great. But anyway, and then just have your ability. You don't have to be the best guitar player in the world. We're not the best guitar players in the world by any stretch.
You got to be easy to get along with.
Know your stuff.
You have to be a certain level of competent, but at that point, they would rather have somebody who is easy to get along with and is like sort of striving for the common good as opposed to crazy virtuoso.
It is a collective. You are working in which I love that music should be that way.
Yep.
But on the Broadway New York thing though, you better know how to read music.
Yes.
Like if you can't read music, you can't walk in the door usually.
It's numbers for Nashville. Just somebody tells you we're playing 4, you better go to the 4.
And eventually, you don't look at the charts at all. You get it.
Yeah.
And, you know it, but you need to be able to read it to learn those parts.
It's true.
I wasn't a great reader, so I used my ear a lot, and I sort of cheated away for a bit there, because piano players can read a hell of a lot better than any guitar player usually. But again, 3 A's available, affable, and ability. And then just be cool.
Be cool. Be a good hang. A good hang. That's the word.
That's if you want to get into it. But that's kind of the experiences. I think they're similar in a lot of ways. I met a bunch of great people.
More similar than you think. Me too.
I worked on lots of weird jingle things. Did Carnival Cruise Line, like ad spots that would be on the boats and national. It was fun. That's a whole other video though. On the ways to make money as a musician and not starve and have to share a pizza with your bandmate.
It's tricky sometimes.
Yeah, it's very poor for a little bit. But those were I know this is a common trope with being a poor musician, trying to make it was some of the best times of my life. I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Not at all.
But I wouldn't have minded $1 million on top of that while I was doing it.
Would have been okay.
No, it's fun. That's Nashville and that's Broadway and Broadway. Nashville, New York. So let's all give our thoughts to those guys now because they're all.
Yes.
Nashville's opening up a bit, but New York is shuttered. And so if there's some of these Broadway stars and artists are doing things online right now. If you're a Broadway fan, search them out. Support them with views and money. Because these are, you struggle your whole life to make it. I had one of these friends of mine, she worked so hard to make it, and she got to have a life on Broadway. She finally got cast in her late 20s, which is late for a dancer.
Right.
On in Chorus Line in Chicago and stuff, but she made it, and she's phenomenal. But, she's retired now, I think, from that. She has a family and kids. But these people, you get a small window for the actors and the dancers in particular. And, so support them.
Support them. If you can't donate to what they're doing, share it. That means more than you know. Share it. If you're I just cannot PayPal or Venmo.
And this might be dumb. I was reading some articles about Eddie Van Halen's passing the other day, and people are I wish I would have told him that, he meant so much to me. He's the reason I was in a band, and all my friends I met from bands is it's not. It isn't ever too it will be too late to say it sometimes, but just tell people if there's a Broadway star you love. If you like Hamilton, tell the cast of Hamilton how much that has changed your life and it's brought you into it. It will get to them. With the social media, even if it's somebody super famous like Hugh Jackman, you can write his agency a letter. It will get to him eventually. He will read it, and it will mean something to him to know that he's affected your life. Because who doesn't love Wolverine? It's weird. I know it made me think about it. It's even the people I have in this room, hey, Jonathan, you mean a lot to me. I should say it more, but that'd be a little weird. I'm not going to. That's it. I'm done being emotional now. That's it. We're going away.
If there's anything that we didn't cover that you want to know, ask us questions in the comments. We will try our best to get to you guys and answer them. Let us know if there are other crazy videos like this you want to hear about us. Hit like and subscribe. Click the bell so you don't miss anything, and we'll see you next time.
Tracksuits forever.